We are presented by WynnBET. Betting is a team sport. Bet together at WynnBET. Eric Allen joined by ESPN's Field Yates. Field, a lot of exciting things happening for you. Congratulations on your new addition to the family.
Yeah, so the first, would it be a draft pick or a free agent signing in the NFL offseason took place actually during divisional round weekend. So my wife and I welcomed a baby girl, which has been amazing. It's been fulfilling. I was proud to announce my retirement from sleep about 6 weeks ago. So we are running on caffeine and the hope and promise of what these prospects here at the Combine are going to bring to NFL teams soon enough.
What's her name?
Kinley.
Okay.
Kinley Yates. So my wife and I each have fairly unique names. We felt this responsibility that we had to sort of think of something we had not previously heard of ourselves. So after about, 6 months of agonizing over names, we finally decided upon one. And once we did, we were like, not only are we done, we're not telling a single soul, because if somebody hears the name and either tells us, oh, that's my cousin's name, or I don't like that name, or I love that, we don't want to be influenced. So 6 months of debate, figured it out, move on.
That was the way to go, by not telling anybody.
Yeah.
I have a 2.5-year-old, a Grace, and we didn't tell anybody beforehand. In fact, after she was born, we were thinking that we were going to name her something leading up to the birth, and then she came out, and I started calling her Gracie, and then we stuck with that.
See, we talked about that. Is it like, what if she comes out and we're like, this is not a Kinley? And then we're like, you know something? Don't let that thought cross into your mind. She's Kinley. Fixed, done. If we have to order 6 monogrammed items before she's born just so we can't change our minds and make ourselves feel more responsible, we will do exactly that.
All right, so let's transition to some football here right now. How much have you enjoyed doing the First Draft podcast with the best there are in terms of evaluating draft prospects over the years, and Mel Kiper, a legend, and then Todd McShay?
Yeah, I love doing it for a lot of reasons, but I tell people, and I was talking about this with Mel actually on his radio show recently, is that there's nobody at ESPN that cares as much and is as passionate about the specific area that they cover as Mel and Todd are about the NFL draft. They eat, sleep, and breathe NFL draft coverage 365 days a year. I joked with Mel that I could ask Mel to do a podcast only on defensive back prospects that went to Washington State. And he would have, over the course of his 38 years of doing this, probably 40 names that come to mind. He is unbelievably unparalleled in terms of his knowledge and his reference points. And then Todd, sometimes when you have someone who takes over a similar role or that identical role to you, but comes in a little bit later than you, it creates a dynamic of competition. And yet Mel and Todd have this tremendous respect for each other. Right. And I think the roots of that are that Mel knows just how much Todd puts into what he does every single day. And Todd has the vantage point of having played the game himself at the college level and has so much that he can offer, not just as an evaluator, but because he's also a college football sideline reporter, he's tapping into sources throughout the fall that help him know more about these people, these players as people, and not just what you see on film. Because as we all know, the evaluation is not simply what you do on Saturdays. It's what you do on Saturdays, but also how you carry yourself, the kind of individual you are, because that football character is in some cases just as important as the football ability.
Right. The information is key, but I also love the entertainment that you guys bring to the table, because you can tell everybody's enjoying themselves. Yes, you eat and drink and sleep football. But with that being said, you guys are out there having a good time.
I always tell people, like, I am always open to hearing, hey, like, less of you. Like, if someone said less of you, meaning me, Field, like, I'm happy to hear that, because my primary objective in that show is to stay out of the way.
You're the point guard.
I try to open the show and say, here are the two people that people actually care about listening to, Mel and Todd. So let's get right into their insights. On occasion, I will add a piece of context here or there, but mostly just to be a point guard, a traffic cop, whatever term you want to use.
So the New York Jets, the key off season is underway.
Yeah.
Before we start talking about the draft, how about free agency? The tampering period, legal tampering period, which is an oxymoron, begins March 14th, and free agency begins March 16th. The Jets have plenty of cap space. What do you think they have to do in free agency, even before we get to the draft?
Yeah, it's always interesting that the NFL, which is different than, as an example, the NBA, has the draft after free agency. And so when we discuss the draft, everything has to kind of be put on hold or at least has to be, you have to sort of earmark it and say, hey, this is what we think in March 1st, but 3 weeks from now, on March 22nd, the Jets could have spent $100 million guaranteed on free agency, and they may have filled 5 needs
Right.
that no longer are needs after those players are signed in free agency. But what I would say specifically as far as the Jets and sort of addressing some of those top needs in free agency is, and I know this is like probably not as exciting to fans as the prospects of acquiring, whoever the best players are in free agencies. You always have to start with the business in-house, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to decide which players that are pending free agents are guys that are going to stay, guys that are going to go, guys that are maybe extension eligible that you need to take care of. So you go through the roster, and whether it's somebody like Braxton Berrios coming off of an all-pro season as a returner, do you want to bring him back? I would imagine there's interest in bringing a guy back who played really well for them last season, gave him a spark in the kicking game, and then it's deciding what kind of market do you anticipate him having? What are you willing to? How are you budgeting for him? And then also other guys that, whether it's a Jamison Crowder who is just days away from the 3-year contract he signed with the Jets being over, amongst other guys on offense. And then defensively, it's evaluating players, not just what they bring to on the field, but medically. Marcus May, obviously a guy who was a franchise tag player just a year ago. Where is he at after that Achilles tear? Is he going to be a guy that's ready to play at the beginning of the season? What's his forecast looking like? So always start with the in-house stuff.
Yeah.
Moving on, because I think fans are more excited about, the big money, big ticket items that you can afford in free agency is, if guys reach the open market, you have to ask yourself, is there a reason why this player was not kept by his incumbent team? If he's so spectacular of a talent, why is he available?
And people often forget that.
Yeah.
And when we're going through this process.
And there's no doubt that players can reach free agency and be extremely valuable to their new team. We just saw a team, and the Rams win the Super Bowl, and some of their best players include a guy like Andrew Whitworth, who was a free agent, and he was an older offensive tackle, but he showed that age apparently is just a number, right? He still played at a high level. Robert Woods, who got hurt in the middle of the season, but that was a guy that they signed as a free agent for the Buffalo Bills. Like, there are guys that reach free agency and are really, really good players, but then you find other teams that make investments, or other situations where a team makes an investment and you say, maybe that's the reason why that the incumbent team was not as motivated to keep him. But just zooming out and examining some of the needs for the Jets, I think after year 1 of Zach Wilson, there are reasons to be optimistic. There are also reasons to understand that, like, the more you can do around him will be maybe not as important as Zach's personal development, but certainly important, and a way to help him be in a better position this upcoming season. So I think the wide receiver room has some interesting pieces. Certainly we saw the emergence Elijah Moore, who was really, really good when he was on the field. Seems like the kind of guy that should be close to an every down player, and I would think plays an even more prominent slot role this upcoming year than he did this past season when he and Jamison were kind of trading snaps there. Corey Davis. But then beyond that, like, is there room for another wide receiver? I'd imagine Jets fans are probably clamoring for another wide receiver, or maybe even another tight end who could make a bigger impact. And then assessing which players are available there. I know it always becomes easy when we're talking about the Jets with Joe Douglas as the GM to just fall back on he's going to find a bunch of offensive linemen or defensive linemen because he was a former offensive lineman himself. And I'm sure they'll be monitoring those markets. But I do think this could be an offseason where the Jets sort of targets and focus extends just beyond the big guys up front, because they probably understand that, like, on offense, a couple more playmakers will go a long way. And I thought the secondary played better down the stretch, but adding a little bit, there's so much youth there that maybe a combination of youth plus experience could go a long way in sort of taking that group to the next level.
WynnBET is now live in New Jersey, and they're bringing the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas to online sports betting. Get in on all your favorite teams, players, and sports, from boosted parlays to live in-game odds on every major sport. They have what you need to win. Sign up today to receive a special offer, risk-free $500 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app now or visit wynnbet.com to start winning. WynnBET, an official sportsbook and gaming partner of the New York Jets. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 or older and present in New Jersey. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-270-7117.
What did you make of Wilson his rookie year? And you're looking at the landscape of the AFC. Wow, there are some quarterbacks. You got Josh Allen inside the division, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. We saw what Joey Burrow did with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Sure. Yeah, I thought that there were plenty of enough reasons to understand why this was the number 2 overall pick in the draft. Flashes of confidence, flashes of unique talent, flashes of major upside. Consistency is always going to be something you watch closely with rookies because it's their first time in the NFL, and more often than not, they are inconsistent. I thought Zach, certainly early in the year, there were some games where you're thinking to yourself, all right, these are rookie moments, right? Yeah. And it's the determining factor about his long-term value is going to be what does he learn from those, or do they persist as problems? And it seemed like by the end of the season, the confidence was way up. I don't think Zach lacks confidence in general, but on the field, that you're continuing to do the right things. And then also, are you doing the things that no matter how big or strong or athletic you are you protecting yourself, you're protecting the football, you're making good decisions consistently? And it seemed like that picked up towards the end of the year. I've something coming out on ESPN.com soon and about predicting starters for this upcoming year at the quarterback spot. And my takeaway, obviously, in the Jets is it's Zach Wilson. Yeah. I'm optimistic. But I think that his development will not just be about him, but just to go back to that point a second ago, is that like Zach Wilson may look different with an offensive line that could be beefed up this offseason, or maybe has Mekhi Becton back in the fold next year at left or right tackle. And then also a couple more playmakers that, Corey Davis missed a good amount of time at the end of the season. Like him having his guys will go a long way towards his development.
You mentioned Elijah Moore, 5 touchdowns in 11 games. Yeah. Michael Carter was selected in the 4th round. He led the team in rushing. Joe Douglas really nailed the 2021 draft class, where you probably could say the floor is it's a good class. Now, if Wilson takes the next step, this potentially could be an excellent, great class.
Yeah, Ollie Vera Tucker obviously was a great guard and all rookie team, and a player that you moved up from 23 to 14 to get. And I remember when that trade took place, they leapt ahead of New England, if I'm not mistaken, at 15.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, when you leap ahead of a team, when you make a trade up, and you're like, oh, they must be leaping ahead of the team that's on the clock next. Now, didn't seem, New England, I don't think that Jets obviously weren't trading up for quarterbacks. So you're like, maybe the Jets forecasted that whether it's somebody at 16, 17, or 18, that like, you can't wait any longer. And you got to find someone to trade up with. So the draft class was strong. It doesn't surprise me that it was a good one. And then what a unique opportunity they have this year. 4 picks in the top 38 and, 2 in the top 10. I don't know how often we see that. Obviously, we have the Giants in that boat as well. Very unique circumstances.
Yeah, especially both teams in New York, right?
It's an all New York draft to begin. It feels like we should throw the draft back at Radio City Music Hall.
I love it.
But yeah, this seems like a pivotal year for them to take a big leap. I think there's opportunity to do exactly that.
So you mentioned the draft capital.
Yep.
2 picks in the top 10. You got number 4 overall. You got number 10. You have 4 picks in the top 38. What do you make from a macro level of this draft class? Because people are saying feels a little bit different up top, but the value is really going to be there in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds.
Yeah, that's true. And I think I think that it's important to be honest with assessments about the draft, because it's not personal. It's a statement of fact. And this is a good year to not need a quarterback if you're picking at the top. And the Jets obviously don't need one of those, right? So if you're a team inside the top 10 that needs a quarterback, like this may not be the draft where you're looking to find one, because it just isn't last year. There were 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 15. And I think if you went back and did this draft over last year, I think all 5 of them are going in at least the top 15, right? If not top 10, right? So there will probably be a quarterback or 2 or maybe even 3 from this year's class that are all pretty good players. But we have seen examples where, the parallel's been drawn to that 2014 draft class. It was 2014. The years all blend together at this point, don't they? The year in which E.J. Manuel was the first quarterback taken. He went to the Bills in the middle of the 1st round, and everybody kind of said, like, this is not a great 1st round for quarterbacks. And that was the case. It just wasn't. It would end up being a draft that did not produce a guy that was, a 5 or 8 or 10-year starter. And that's okay. These drafts do exist. It's a great draft for pass rushers. I think there are some interesting, unique impact players in that top 10 that maybe – like safety is not necessarily this group that's chock full of, 4 first-round picks, but there's one that's kind of a unicorn in Kyle Hamilton.
Listen, a lot of Jets fans get nervous when you say safety up there, but why is that guy a special player, and how could he be a good fit potentially in this defense?
Yeah, I'm not saying that we need to totally get rid of the idea of drafting every position in the top 5 and having it be like a flawed decision. Right. Sometimes it's just the right thing. As a matter of fact, I remember my first year with the Kansas City Chiefs when I was working as a scouting grunt, basically. We had the 5th overall pick in the draft. And it was the first year that Scott Pioli was the general manager, and people are trying to use past behavior to sort of predict future behavior. And they say, "Oh, there's no way Scott Pioli came from the Patriots. They never taken a safety that high, and you just generally don't see that a safety going that high." In the fifth pick, we ended up taking on Eric Berry, who went on to become one of the most coveted rookies right away. Was an impact player, well, maybe our best, one of our best defensive players from the moment he arrived. Changed our defense. Went on to sign a massive extension. Was one of the highest paid safeties ever. I think he may have actually been the highest paid safety at the time he got his long-term deal. And so, there is evidence that you can go and find that unique piece. And I think the safety spot in the NFL today is important for a lot of reasons. It always is, but it's important because we are seeing some of the tight ends. Like, we're seeing not a ton, but we're seeing, it's not just sort of Travis Kelce and everybody else. You've got Travis Kelce, you've got George Kittle, you've got Mark Andrews, you've got Darren Waller, you've got some of these pieces in the middle of the field that if you can't, think about the division you play in. As of right now, at least, you've got Mike Gesicki in Miami. He's going to be a free agent, but still could be franchise tagged. Dawson Knox, really good young player for the Bills. Patriots have a two tight end
jumped
attack.
out last year.
Totally. Hunter Henry had an exceptional season for the Patriots. Like, you got to have a guy in the middle of the field that can help you deter those guys a little bit. And Kyle Hamilton, 6'4", 220 pounds, and I'm saying that before he's actually officially weighed in at the combine.
Yeah.
So if he comes in at 6'3.5",
we're not going to hold you to it.
Yep. But there's going to be one play every year. There's a couple prospects who have like a play that shines through. Is like the one you see 50 times in the pre-draft process, and I think you'll see the play from Kyle Hamilton. It was one of the first games of the 2021 season, Florida State, where he must run 40 yards laterally. I mean, it's one of those plays where it almost felt like he heard the play call and couldn't give up the fact that he was going to be moving to where the ball was thrown, but just sort of a master class in timing and anticipation and instincts and athletic ability. And so I think you'll see that play run over and over and over again. It's just a reminder that not too many players, if any, of his size in this class can move like he does. So really unique guy. If he's not off the board at 4, put it this way, I would be surprised if he's still there at pick 10.
Right.
Assuming the medicals check out, because he did have a knee injury. So assuming that's the case, like, he might be one of those guys that if you bypass him at 4, by 10, he'll be somebody else's first-round pick.
Jets got some really good value on day 3 of the draft with those defenders last year.
Yeah.
When you're talking about Brandon Eccles, comes in from Kentucky.
Yep.
2 interceptions, a lot of PDs. Bryce Hall really made a jump in his second season. His next step is obviously to take the ball away, but he was among the league leaders in pass defenses. You got Michael Carter, who's going to fill that nickel role for a long time here for the Jets, you would figure. I wanted to ask you about one of the top cornerbacks in this draft, Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati, because I think at the end of this week, a lot of people are going to be even talking about him more.
Really unique guy, extremely tall, long, athletic. Straight line speed is there. Confidence is through the roof. He's a player that I think believes that he is, and I say this in a way that's like endearing, like it's a positive. I think he believes he's better than the player who's opposite of him in a good way. There's that swagger, there's that mindset. And normally I talk about how cornerbacks need to have a short memory because you're going to get burned every once in a while, and you got to be like a batter who goes 0 for 3 and then comes up with the bases loaded on that 4th at bat and says, "I'm hitting the home run," right? You got to be that as a defensive back. Sauce didn't have to worry about that very much in college. He did not allow a touchdown as a primary defender in coverage, which I know some people will say those primary coverage stats could be a little bit subjective, but the bottom line is that if there were big plays led up by Cincinnati, rarely was Sauce Gardner around them. A lot of confidence, a lot of swagger. To my knowledge, no major red flags coming into this week, so nothing that I'm aware of that would make him someone you don't expect to see called very soon in the draft process. So I anticipate he'll go very high. He and Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU are the 2 players that are often regarded as the top 2 cornerbacks in this year's class. So I think there's a chance that you'll see one of those two as the first cornerback. And I think if I had to make a bet right now, it would be Sauce Gardner. But that's the beauty of the next, not quite 2 months, but almost 2 months.
How do you separate some of these top offensive linemen? Ike Kwanu
Yeah.
out of NC State. You
Yep.
got Evan Neal out of Alabama. And
Yep.
Charles Cross is a guy from Mississippi State who's getting a lot of love recently.
Three hard to beat. These three as a trio at the top. Evan Neal is massive. He's got we don't see too many Mekhi Becton level size players, but he's not quite as physically imposing as Mekhi Becton, but not that far off. He's 6 foot. Again, these are all pre combine measurements, but 6'7", 350. He's just a behemoth. Moves freakishly, just crazy movement for a guy that should probably not. I don't even know how he does half the stuff that he does.
Somebody was showing me he was doing a split squat or something.
Yeah,
like
he
that.
had that video that went viral before the season. Yeah, he's impressive. So very good athlete. Played 3 different positions in college. Started 3 different spots each of his years at Alabama. So he's got versatility. Ike Ekwonu from North Carolina State is a bully, and I mean that in a good way. Just wants to knock the snot out of you. Had just an incredible rise over the past couple of years at NC State. Really unique story. His twin brother plays at Notre Dame. Father was a basketball player, 6'6". He's a doctor now. So the kid's got the size and some of the smarts as well from their dad, which is pretty cool. Neat family they've got. But just I think he wants to take your soul, not just protect his quarterback. And then Charles Cross is just one of those where it's just sort of clean.
Yeah.
It's just kind of not a lot of negative plays on tape. He's outstanding in pass protection, maybe the best in the group in terms of pass protection. Played in a unique offense. They throw the ball a million times a year at Mississippi State. So, and it's a lot of it is empty. It's not like you're getting help from the running back. You're not getting a chip from the tight end. It's you, and it's only you. And really super impressed by all 3 of them. I am holding back on assessing exactly how I think they stack up 1, 2, 3. I think that right now, because I think there's a lot left, I think probably general consensus is that you've got Ike Ekwonu and Evan Neal in like tier 1. Charles Cross might be like tier 1.5, but 3 good guys that wouldn't surprise me if the Jets decide to go if they decide to use one of those 2 picks on offensive tackle. I'd imagine that one of those 3 would be one of them.
And speaking of first draft, Mel Kiper has the Jets taking Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa with that 10th overall selection.
He's going to crush this combine. He is just an absolute freak athlete. Played at Iowa, best center in the country this past year. Remington winner, which best center in the country is awarded that. He just sort of checks all the boxes. Good size, unbelievable athlete. He's got a wrestling background, tough. Iowa's had 1 million offensive linemen come through the league. He'll be the 1 million and first, or what would be 1 million and first offensive lineman. Solid, no nonsense, tough, young, true junior coming out. I don't think he's going to have to wait long. And I know that, some people think that these interior offensive linemen, you can debate the merits of using a top 10 pick on them.
It's almost like the safety position that you just covered before. A lot of people say you can't take a center early. I say, why not? I mean, I'm not saying for the Jets. I'm just saying for any team. If you like that prospect
for 10 years, you take them, wouldn't you? Yeah. So, I mean, listen, the Jets used a 14th overall pick on a guard last year. How did they feel about, AVT? He's been one of the best players in the roster already, right? So, if you're convicted, it's worth it. So, Linderbaum, I think, will be an early he will hear his name early as well.
WynnBET is now live in New Jersey, and they're bringing the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas to online sports betting. Get in on all your favorite teams, players, and sports, from boosted parlays to live in-game odds on every major sport. They have what you need to win. Sign up today to receive a special offer, risk-free $1,000 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app now or visit wynnbet.com to start winning. WynnBET, an official sportsbook and gaming partner of the New York Jets. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 or older and present in New Jersey. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-270-7117.
Early thoughts on the edge prospects. Everybody's talking about the depth, which we saw down in Mobile, Alabama. The Jets had the good fortune of coaching the national team down there, and there were a lot of guys who pop, but you're going to get even more of that group here in Indianapolis.
Great group. Has the makings of a great group, I should say. At the top, you've got at least 2 that are really solid. Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, 2 guys that's just physically unique, dominant in college. I mean, Hutchinson's last season was spectacular for Michigan. plays with an edge to him. Thibodeau, you just don't find guys that are as wiry and athletic as he is. So really good edge class, but it goes beyond just those two players. David Ojabo, teammate of Aiden Hutchinson at Michigan, a really good player as well in his own right. So you're going to have George Karlaftis from Purdue, sort of a little bit of a wider range in terms of opinions right now, but another Big Ten pass rusher that's really, really good. Got actually in the Big Ten as well, Arlen Biquete, who played at Penn State, kid from Maryland originally, high school. He is another productive, we see those Penn State pass rushers come every year or two. There's at least one of them that we're talking about. So wouldn't surprise me if we have 5, 6, maybe 7 pass rushers in the first 30 to 35 picks.
Wow.
Really good class for that. And I don't know a team in the NFL. I can't think of one off the top of my head that cannot use more depth at pass rusher.
Yeah, and Jermaine Johnson included in the mix. And he's a guy who practiced twice in Mobile and said, I'm good at this point. And he might have been the best overall player down there.
Phenomenal week for him. Florida State standout, unique athlete. They've had a lot of those as well too, right? So would not be surprised if he's amongst those 5, 6, 7 guys that go in the first 30 or 35 picks.
So what's your off season looking like? A lot of family
a lot
duties.
Of diapers, a lot of diaper changing, and that's about as far as I'll go. Free agency's around the corner here, so no draft. First draft takes care of my week for a chunk of it, and just do my best to stay on top of all these prospects.
You're doing an awesome job. I just wanted to end with this. What do you think about the alignment with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh? Now, this is Joe Douglas's 3rd draft, but it feels more like the 2nd year, doesn't it? Because Robert Saleh was hired last January.
Yeah, actually, going back, I know that we're very much on the 2022, but one of the things I liked about the process last year was that, to my knowledge, and you can correct me if I've totally messes up for a year, is that there really wasn't a connection between Robert and Joe. This is just an authentic search. I'm going out there to find the person that I believe is the best coach for the Jets going forward. And I'm not saying that familiarity is bad. I think it's very useful. But in a league where so frequently the head coach and GM have this long-standing previous relationship, sometimes it's good to have 2 people that come from different minds and different backgrounds. Joe and Robert are going to learn on the fly together, learn more about each other. But I would say, speaking generally, Joe did a good job of finding young talent. We talked about the draft class. And then I thought that the improvement of the offensive line got much better from the start to the finish of last year. The secondary got much better from the start to the finish of last year. Zach Wilson got much better from start to finish last year. That's a coaching, right? That's you got the right people in place coaching them up, and Jets didn't have a lot, if any, coaches have attrition this offseason. So you've got the same people for the most part guiding that growth from whether we want to call this year 2 together, or year 2.5, or Joe Douglas in year 2 for Robert Saleh.
Field Yates crushing it all as always. We appreciate you stopping by. Should we end with the scouting report from your Wesleyan days?
Slow, unathletic. I was a great cheerleader from the bench. Anything else that stands out? No, not really. I think I might have had a special teams tackle or 2. That's about it.
Linebacker and tight end?
I was a safety in college after a linebacker and tight end in high school.
Okay.
So, inglorious career is how I would describe it. But it's a valuable part of my life to be a part of team, is what I've always said. So
appreciate your time.
Right back to you. Thanks for having me on.